The call came just after 2:00 a.m. on a storm, heavy Tuesday morning, the kind of call no one is ever ready for. "Myra," came her brother's voice, thick with grief. "Dad's gone." She sat up in bed, the room spinning around her. Her hands trembled as she gripped the phone. The silence after his words rang louder than thunder outside. She didn't cry right away. She just sat there as if her brain was buffering the news. Then it hit her all at once, a wave of agony crashing down on her chest. The next day, with eyes still swollen from crying, she emailed her boss, Daniel Grant, to request 3 days off. The funeral was out of state, and there was no way she'd make it back in time if she didn't leave the next morning. She even attached a copy of the obituary and offered to work remotely afterward if needed. Daniel replied within an hour, "Take the time you need. Family first. I'm so sorry for your loss, Myra." Those words would come to haunt her. She left that evening, numb but grateful that at least she didn't have to fight for time to mourn. Her father, the man who had raised her on late night ramen noodles and bedtime stories, who believed in her when she didn't believe in herself, deserved a proper goodbye. The funeral was intimate, quiet, devastating. Myra stood beside her father's casket in a simple black dress, gripping the speech she could barely bring herself to read. Every word felt like a betrayal and admission that he was really gone. During the reception, she checked her work email once, out of habit. She even responded to a few client queries and sent updates. She didn't want to leave loose ends. Her father had taught her to finish what she started. 3 days passed in a haze of grief and family obligations. When she returned home, she was emotionally drained but ready to slowly return to her routine. She arrived at the office the next morning wearing her usual blazer, holding a coffee she barely touched. She noticed it immediately. People were looking at her strangely. As she stepped into her cubicle, her computer access was denied. Locked out, her heart sank. Before she could even ask anyone what was going on, an automated email pinged her phone. Subject: termination of employment, dear Myra Ellis. Due to an unapproved leave of absence and failure to comply with attendance policies, your employment has been terminated effective immediately. She reread the email at least 5 times. What? This had to be a mistake. Her leave was approved. She had it in writing. She ran to Daniel's office. The door was shut. She knocked. No response. She called his extension voicemail. She went to HR, but they claimed they couldn't speak to her without a scheduled appointment. An appointment. My leave was approved, she said, breathless, showing them the email on her phone. "I'm sorry," the HR rep said with a robotic calmness, eyes never meeting hers, "but there's no record of that in our system. If you have concerns, you can escalate to our legal department." Legal department? I was burying my father. The woman blinked slowly. "I understand this is upsetting." No. She didn't understand. None of them did. By the time Myra left the building, her hands were shaking, her chest tight with rage and disbelief. She sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, screaming into the silence. How could they do this to her? After everything, she had worked weekends, late nights, holidays. She had canceled vacations for this company. She had mentored new hires. She had even once driven Daniel's wife to the hospital when she fainted at a company event. 3 days, that's all she took, and they erased her like she was a stain. Later that evening, she called Daniel from her apartment, hoping for clarity. He answered, voice casual. "Hey, Myra, you fired me," she asked, her voice brittle. "I'm sorry, but you took unapproved time off. We had deliverables and—" "You approved it, Daniel? You said family first." He paused, then said coolly, "I don't have that on record, and I can't discuss this further. HR is handling it now." Click. He hung up. That was the moment the grief twisted into something new. Not just sadness, not just confusion, but betrayal, cold, sharp, and personal. That night she didn't sleep. She stayed up reading company policies, digging through old emails, saving everything. Every compliment from clients, every well done from managers, every text that showed Daniel praising her loyalty. She thought of her father, how he used to tell her, sometimes the world breaks you to see what you're made of. She wiped her tears. They wanted her broken. They were about to find out who they just fired. The morning after her termination, Myra sat at her small kitchen table, still in her funeral, black dress shirt, staring at her laptop. Her inbox was filled with echoes of her career project approvals, glowing performance reviews, client thank you messages. It felt like looking through the wreckage of a home after a fire. The worst part wasn't losing her job. It was the humiliation, the silence. Not a single colleague had reached out. No explanation, no apology. Just a corporate erasure, as if she'd never existed. But she knew better. She had been their top performer for 3 years straight. She had built client relationships that earned the company millions. She didn't just work for them, she held their broken pieces together when no one else would. And now, tossed out like a used paper towel for attending her father's funeral. She spent the day compiling every piece of evidence she had. Emails, texts, voicemails, meeting notes, the approved leave email from Daniel, screenshots, time logs, even Slack messages where she mentioned the funeral and got condolences from team members. Each file was labeled meticulously. She had no legal background, but rage has a way of making people resourceful. By evening, she called her old college friend Tasha, a rising attorney who had always said, "Call me if you ever need to fight Goliath." Myra's voice cracked over the phone. "I think I just got fired illegally." Tasha didn't hesitate. "Send me everything." The next day, Tasha called her back, her voice sharp with fury. "Myra, this isn't just unethical, it's illegal. You have a wrongful termination case, clear as day. They violated labor law by firing you for taking approved bereavement leave. That email from Daniel. It's your smoking gun." Myra felt something flicker in her chest for the first time in days. A spark. A pulse. "They think I'll just walk away," she whispered. Tasha's voice hardened. "Then let's show them you're not the one." Word began to spread. Quietly, carefully. An ex-colleague named Lion reached out via LinkedIn with a simple message. "He did the same thing to me. I was let go after my mother died. Said I was emotionally unavailable. I didn't fight it. I wish I had." Then another, a tech manager, fired after going on stress leave. A pregnant woman, forced out after requesting maternity accommodations. Myra began to realize she wasn't the first. She just might be the last straw. Her days now had structure again, but it wasn't corporate. It was warfare. She met with Tasha every other day, assembling the legal case like a general planning a siege. She filed an official complaint with the Department of Labor. She shared her story anonymously on an employment rights forum, where it quickly caught fire. Hundreds of comments poured in. Some shared their own experiences. Others offered to help. Daniel and the company still hadn't said a word. But the internet was talking. 3 weeks later, she received a cease and desist letter from her former employer's legal team, accusing her of defamation for speaking out, claiming her statements may harm the company's reputation. Myra laughed bitterly. She wasn't the one who had harmed the company's reputation. They had done that all on their own. She called Tasha immediately. "I want to go public, not anonymous, not quiet, my name, my face, I'm done being polite." Tasha paused, then said, "Then let's build it airtight. Let's burn the whole damn house down." Myra created a digital folder titled, "Receipts They Wish I Didn't Keep." Inside, her performance reviews screenshots of messages praising her dedication, the leave approval email from Daniel, proof of her login and communication during her time off, and statements from former employees willing to testify she wasn't just going to file a lawsuit. She was going to make it loud. But revenge wasn't her only focus. In the quiet moments, the ones where grief still cracked through her armor, she remembered her father's voice. Don't fight to destroy, fight to build something better. That's when the idea first came to her, a worker advocacy platform. A place for people like her, Lion, and the pregnant employee who never got her maternity leave. A place to be believed. A place to fight back. One night, as she walked past her old office building on a rainy evening, she looked up at the 8th floor window where her desk once sat. The lights were on. The people were still inside, typing, grinding, surviving. She smiled to herself. She was no longer in that cage. They had thrown her out trying to break her. But in doing so, they had set her free. 3 months after her termination, Myra no longer looked like the woman who once cried alone in her car, clutching her pink slip. The darkness in her eyes hadn't faded, but it had sharpened. Grief had matured into something else. Clarity, purpose, and a righteous kind of fury. She no longer woke up to performance reviews and endless Zoom meetings. Now she woke up to deposition prep and strategy calls. She wasn't building sales campaigns anymore. She was building a case. The wrongful termination lawsuit was officially filed on a brisk Thursday morning under public record. Myra's legal team didn't just argue unlawful dismissal. They included claims of emotional distress, reputational damage, and violation of federal bereavement protections. Within hours of filing, a journalist from a well-known labor rights blog reached out, having seen the documents in the public docket. "Would you be willing to speak on the record?" Myra hesitated, but only for a second, yes. The article dropped the next week, Fired for Grieving, How One Woman's Termination is Exposing a Company's Pattern of Abuse. It named the company. It named Daniel Grant, and it named her. Within 48 hours, the article had thousands of shares. Comments poured in. Former employees, clients, interns, all of them with eerily similar stories. "He told me I was too emotional after my dad passed away. I got written up for attending my sister's funeral. I quit the next week. They promised support during my medical leave, then laid me off 2 days after surgery." The story broke the silence. And Myra, she broke the pattern. Inside the company, chaos rippled like cracks in glass. Daniel called an emergency all, hands meeting to do damage control. He used all the right buzzwords. "We value our team. We're investigating these claims. We are committed to a respectful workplace." But it was too late. Myra had receipts, so did others. Tasha's firm was now representing 3 more plaintiffs with similar complaints, each one echoing the same themes: retaliation, abuse of power, and corporate gaslighting. Myra started a blog called Grieve and Fight. What began as a personal outlet turned into a digital sanctuary. Within a month, it had over 10,000 subscribers. She shared her story, posted updates about the case, and gave others a platform to share their own experiences anonymously. People began to call it the #funeral fired movement. It was no longer just about her. It had become a reckoning. Then something unexpected happened. One night, she received an anonymous tip via the contact form on her blog. It simply read, "If you want to prove this goes deeper, check the vendor payment logs. Look into the expense reports. It's not just HR violations, it's fraud too." Attached, a partially redacted PDF of internal financial records. Enough to raise serious questions. She sent it straight to Tasha. By the next morning, her legal team had added a whistleblower protection claim to the case. If proven true, the case would expand from wrongful termination to include potential criminal fraud. Daniel wasn't just unethical, he might be dirty. Reporters were now circling like vultures. Another article dropped. Former exec under fire as employee lawsuits multiply. Odd, it report demanded. Daniel tried to issue a press statement claiming defamatory campaigns by disgruntled former staff, but it didn't land, especially after internal Slack messages were leaked, showing callous jokes about employee leave requests and grief. One even referenced Myra directly. "She's off again. Jesus, maybe we should fire her before she turns the office into a funeral home." The public backlash was immediate. Clients began pulling contracts. Investors demanded answers. The company's stock price dropped for the first time in 5 years. And yet, through it all, Myra remained steady, focused, quietly powerful. People began to refer to her not just as a victim, but as a force. She wasn't screaming into the void anymore. She had their attention. Then came the letter, hand-delivered, heavy linen envelope. The company's logo stamped in gold. She opened it with trembling fingers. Settlement offer, $475,000 in return for dropping the lawsuit, retracting public statements, and signing a non-disclosure agreement. It was almost $500,000. But it came with silence, gag clauses, a digital muzzle. She stared at the number, the zeros, and then she smiled. She ripped the letter in half. Money wasn't the goal anymore. This wasn't just about justice for her. This was about burning down a system that thrived on silence.